Now, the leaders of 7 of the world's most powerful democracies gather in Japan today for the annual G7 summit taking place in Hiroshima.
The powers of China and Russia are expected to dominate the agenda, with President Zelensky also now reportedly making an appearance during this week's events.
We're joined now by former National Security Advisor Sir Mark Lyall Grant. Thank you ever so much indeed for joining us. How important is this summit, do you think, at the G7 for world politics? Some people might say that, this is the last remnants of the West, and actually it's the East now that's taken over the world, and this is a bit of a sideshow. What's your view about that?
No, I think these G7 summits are important. They still represent most of the richest countries in the world, and even some outside the 7 are being invited. So India, for instance, has been invited, Vietnam has been invited, Brazil. So some other big players are invited as observers to this summit. What's unusual, I think, about the summit this weekend is it's very much a geopolitical one. It's not going to be talking so much about the economy, energy, financial crisis, such as dominated agendas previously. It's going to be very much focused on Russia, Ukraine on the one hand, and on the threat from China on the other. So for that reason as well, it's a very important meeting, I think.
And how do you think Rishi is being accepted here? Do you think he is actually playing a powerful role amongst this group?
Well, it's Rishi Sunak's first meeting as at the G7 summit, so it's an important one for him. I mean, Britain is there by right. I mean, we are the 5th largest economy in the world. Still, we have a global reach. We have a strong diplomatic network, nuclear weapons, etc., permanent member of the Security Council. So there's no question that we earn our right to be part of this elite group. Now, Rishi Sunak will be treated like all other members of the group. I mean, there are regular rotations. The Italian Prime Minister, for instance, it's her first meeting as well this week. So I don't think it's relevant so much who the individual is as the country that they represent.
And I guess the main focus that, in the geopolitical world is about China, and there seems to be lots of focus on not relying on China so much for important pieces of equipment. Esther and I went on a cross-party delegation to Washington, and they seem to be obsessed with that in Congress and the Senate. Is this really the biggest geopolitical issue for these Western democracies for the future? How you end your reliance on China?
That certainly is a very important topic. I think what we'll see at the summit is a great deal of unity, strength, solidarity on the issue of Russia and Ukraine. And the leaders have already issued a very strong statement, increased sanctions against Russia, as we heard in the news bulletin. But on China, there is more nuances of difference between the different countries, with France and Germany perhaps at one end of the spectrum and the United States at the other, wanting to take a tougher line against China. So I think all the Western countries want to reduce their reliance on China, want to resist China's economic coercion, and want to push back against the Chinese threat to the world order set up after the Second World War. But there are differences in how much they want to decouple their economies from China.
So,
and that's
Mark,
a particular challenge for the United Kingdom, because post-Brexit, we can't really afford not to have some form of trade and investment relationship with China, which is already the 2nd largest economy in the world.
So, Mark, with Liz Truss in Taiwan and Boris Johnson in Seoul, is this helpful or not for this G7 meeting?
Well, I don't think it changes the price of fish, to be honest, what sort of ex-prime ministers are doing in the region. I think what matters is how the G7 can come together and agree a strategic policy towards China that is sustainable in the longer term. there may be a change of American president in the next 18 months. That will be extremely significant in terms of dealing with China. So I think all the countries around the table today will want to bring together their collective approach and show that they are united in dealing with the challenge of rising China in a way that does not escalate a conflict with China, which of course no one wants and would be catastrophic for the world economy.
So Mark Lyall Grant, thank you very much indeed for giving us your insight today.